And just like that, they blinked. After days of defiance, after Germany said nein, after France said no, after Britain said, this is not our war, after every single one of those Western European welfare states claimed that they had rebuffed President Trump, something remarkable happened. They all just today issued a joint statement declaring, all right, we're in. And just like that, the Hormuz coalition is real. Stick them to the very end of this video because I'm going to show you not only how Europe is finally stepping up, but how an entirely new regional architecture may have just rendered the Hormuz choke point a thing of the past. You are not going to want to miss this. Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, here to help you make sense of the madness with breaking news and analysis you're not going to get anywhere else. So you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Now, let me set the scene here for you because to understand just how dramatic this reversal is, you need to understand what happened just days ago. We actually talked a bit about this in my first video today. This is a breathtaking pivot, and the speed of it tells you really everything you need to know about who actually holds all the leverage in this new orbital order, as I like to call it. We're not dealing with a world order anymore. We're dealing literally with a cosmic order. When Operation Epic Fury entered its third week, with oil prices rocketing past $105 a barrel and gas prices in London hitting the equivalent of literally $8 a gallon, Trump turned to his NATO allies and said very simply, look, you benefit from the Strait of Hormuz far more than we do. Europe gets 10% of its oil through that waterway, 5 times what the U.S. gets. Come and help us. We could use it. You know, we wouldn't mind it. We don't need it, but it certainly help. And the response that Trump got back was absolutely brazen in its arrogance and ingratitude. European nations, NATO allies, basically said, no, this isn't our war. In other words, just to put it very simply, the nations whose economies are most directly imperiled by the closure of the Strait of Hormuz refused to lift a finger to open it. Now, this was the moment Trump had frankly been waiting for. And I mean that literally because Trump's critique of NATO has never been emotional. It's always been transactional. It's always been consistent for over a decade. Back in his first term, he called NATO obsolete, not because he wanted necessarily to destroy it, but because he wanted to fix it. And he had 3 specific complaints. The alliance was designed to fight a Soviet Union, an enemy that no longer existed. It wasn't adapting to new modern threats, and most member states were blatantly freeloaders. Can't even say it, blah, blah, blah. Blatantly freeloading on American defense spending. So Trump took this opportunity in Hormuz to look at NATO and say, all right, prove me wrong. Here's your moment. Show me you're relevant. And instead of proving him wrong, NATO handed him exactly the ammunition he needed to justifiably collapse the transatlantic alliance. Check it out.
I think NATO's making a very foolish mistake, and I've long said that, I wonder whether or not NATO would ever be there for us. So this was a great test because we don't need them, but they should have been there. The other thing is, and I think, very important, we didn't have to be there for Ukraine. Biden chose to spend hundreds of billions of dollars on Ukraine. And I guess the head of Germany just made a statement that, they weren't involved and they have nothing to do with the war. But at the same time, they think we did a great thing by knocking them out. Nobody wants to have Iran or anybody, but nobody wants to have Iran with a nuclear, because these people are crazy. They're absolutely crazy.
President Trump warned that NATO was facing what he called a very bad future if allies failed to respond. It wasn't a threat. It was a verdict. We've always wanted to see if you, our so-called European allies, would come to our aid just like we've always come to yours. And you just answered that question loud and clear. Well, as it turns out, that's all these freeloading European nations needed to hear. As of today, 6 U.S. allies have just released, as of today, a joint statement completely capitulating to Trump's pressure. The UK, France, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, and Japan, they have all formally expressed their, quote, readiness to contribute to appropriate efforts to ensure safe passage through Hormuz. And to its credit, the UK has already dispatched 2 warships to the region and sent military officers directly to CENTCOM headquarters in Tampa to begin joint planning. So the coalition has 1 serious member. It's got 5 reluctant signatories, and with a lot of work to do, no question, but it was a major capitulation. In the meantime, something extraordinary is happening with physical altering the arteries of global civilization. We've actually never quite seen anything like this, and it's going to absolutely blow you away. This is the kind of earth-shattering stuff you'll never get from the TDS-infected legacy media. And that's because what's presented as neutral reporting seeks to steer perception instead of surface all the facts. Millions are realizing that news is broken. But where do you turn then? Well, luckily, there's a solution that helps you see exactly what's being emphasized, ignored, or spun. Ground News pulls headlines from over 50,000 news sources and makes it easier to understand what's actually happening. You can see the political bias of each outlet, insights like reliability and outlet ownership, and how coverage breaks down across the spectrum. That's why over 1 million people have downloaded Ground News. Check it out for yourself at ground.news/Steve. Now, my personal favorite feature is the blind spot feed. It shows you which stories are blowing up on one side of the aisle but barely mentioned on the other. It's the clearest way to see media bias in action. So, for example, here's a story the left is completely ignoring, where the U.S. Supreme Court just unanimously smacked down lower courts for trying to interfere with President Trump's deportation efforts. It was a colossal loss for the left, and the legacy media has all but ignored it. Now, of course, right-wing media has its own blind spots, but now you'll know. Right? With every story, Ground News shows you the entire spectrum of who's reporting from left, right, and center, how reliable each source is, and who owns each outlet. It's everything the corporate press doesn't want you to see. Right now, you can get 40% off the Vantage plan, which gives you unlimited access to all the features that I personally use for about $5 a month. Just visit ground.news/Steve, click the link in the description, or scan the QR code. That's ground.news/Steve. The Hormuz coalition is not just a tactical development in a regional war. It's the architectural announcement of a new world order in the Middle East. There's something that's now being discussed at the highest levels of strategic planning that could fundamentally reshape the global energy map for the rest of the century. It's called the Musandam Canal. The Strait of Hormuz is just 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, and the actual navigable shipping lane is actually just a mere 2 miles wide in each direction. Through that impossibly thin strip of water passes nearly, if you can believe it, 20% of the entire world's oil supply every single day. Saudi Arabia's oil, Iraq's oil, Kuwait's, UAE's, all of it is funneled through a corridor so narrow that Iran's been able to hold the entire global economy hostage simply by threatening to close it. Right now, with Operation Epic Fury underway, traffic through the strait is down 90%. Hundreds of fully loaded supertankers are sitting at anchor in the Persian Gulf with nowhere to go. So here's the question that engineers and strategists have been asking for decades. What if you just bypass the strait entirely? So look at this map. Oman has a fascinating geographical feature, a small detached exclave called the Musandam Peninsula. It's a rugged, jagged, mountainous fortress of land that juts out directly into the Strait of Hormuz. And here's the extraordinary thing. In several places along the peninsula, the distance between the Persian Gulf on one side and the Gulf of Oman, and therefore the open Arabian Sea on the other side, is only a few dozen miles, which raises the obvious question in geopolitics right now: why not cut a canal straight through it? Well, that's exactly what the Musandam Canal proposal envisions. a navigable channel, roughly 90 kilometers long, 270 meters wide at the base, 27 meters deep, deep enough to accommodate the largest supertankers on Earth. Ships leaving the Persian Gulf would sail straight through the canal, bypassing the Strait of Hormuz entirely, and emerge directly into the open ocean without ever passing through Iranian flank waters. Now, the challenges are enormous, and no one's pretending otherwise, okay? Because the Musandam Peninsula isn't flat desert. It's extremely mountainous. It makes the Panama Canal, frankly, look like a backyard project. Estimates for the Musandam Canal range from $100 billion to as high as $400 billion, depending on the engineering approach. It would require moving approximately 1 billion cubic meters of rock. It would take decades to build. And then there's the military question, because even if you build the canal, I mean, Iran's missiles could still reach the Musandam Peninsula very easily with their shortest range ballistic systems. So you would need to treat this canal as a permanent military installation. It would have to have its own THAAD battery, Patriot missile coverage, Aegis naval escorts, and hardened underground infrastructure from day one. But here's the thing. And this is the point that I really want you to sit with here. The very fact that this crisis is happening right now, right? The closure of the strait, the coalition forming, Operation Epic Fury systematically destroying Iran's ability to project power, the Abraham coalition being battle-tested, all of it changes the calculus on the canal completely. A new political and economic order is rising in the Middle East, and now would be the perfect time to create numerous shipping channels to reflect that order. Iran is being defanged. Several Gulf countries are now actively exploring and discussing the possibility of constructing a massive canal linking the Persian Gulf directly to the Arabian Sea. And a militarily defanged Iran can no longer threaten a canal under construction. And an Abraham coalition with Arab money, Israeli muscle, and now a Western Hormuz coalition providing naval cover, it's exactly the kind of permanent security architecture that could protect a canal once it's built. That's the civilizational significance of what's being assembled here right before our very eyes. Not just a military coalition, not just a new alliance framework, but a permanent physical reordering of the arteries of global civilization. The Hormuz coalition secures the strait today. Operation Epic Fury removes the Iranian threat for a generation. The Abraham Accords provide the civilizational infrastructure of the new regional order. And the Musandam Canal, if the will exists to build it, makes the whole thing permanent. Because you can't hold hostage a choke point that no longer exists. If you found this video helpful, you'll love Patriot Alerts, my free daily newsletter plus weekly rack-up. Check out the link below.